Hi everyone, it's Terry here from nutsaboutsstamping.com. In today's video, I'm going to show you a really cool technique. You could call it antiquing, you could call it aging, and I'm going to show you this technique as I create a birthday card using two of my favorite stamp sets. This one is Daisy Lane. You can tell that it's a Dutch stamp set. I think it's really cool that Stampin' Up! Brings out stamp sets in a variety of different languages, and this one happens to be Dutch. And I'm going to use the best year stamp set for my phrase. So my card base is going to be basic gray. I've cut it 8.5 by 5.5, and I've scored it on the 4 1/4 mark. I'm going to put this aside for a minute though, because I want to start showing you this antiquing technique using a layer of gray granite. So I've cut this to be a layer on the front of my card. And the first thing I'm going to do for this aging technique is I am going to emboss the layer. So I have my 3D embossing folder. It is the Subtle 3D folder, and I'm going to run it through the Big Shot. And the reason that I'm embossing it is that it starts to break down the layers, the fiber layers in the cardstock. I'm going to use my Big Shot again in a few minutes, but for now I'm going to show you. I don't know if you can see it on the video. I sure hope you can, but there's a very subtle embossed layer, which is why it's a subtle embossing folder. And then to antique it, I'm going to take my bone folder and I am going to run my bone folder firmly but gently, because I don't want to tear the fibers in this cardstock layer. And I'm going to just keep rubbing and rubbing and rubbing until I've gone around all 4 sides and I'm happy with the aged look that's created by using my bone folder. Here's what it looks like. Hopefully you can see the aged borders or edges on this layer. So I'm going to attach that layer next to the front of my card. Oh, my adhesive is almost run out. Let me bring in another one. There we go. Now I'm not going to run my adhesive to the very edges of my layer because I actually want it to sort of curl up off the front of my card. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is bring in a piece of the Plaid Tidings Designer Series paper, and I'm basically going to do the same thing. I'm going to age or antique the layer for the front of my card. So I'll do that and I'll be back in a moment. I'm happy with how that looks. So now what I'm going to do is I want to pop this off the front of my card. And so to do so, I'm going to use my Stampin' Dimensionals, the larger ones, or I guess the regular size ones, because we also have minis, and I'll show you those in a minute. And I'm going to add this layer sort of a little bit below the center point vertically for my card, and you'll see why in a minute. All right, so now it's time to do some stamping. I have another piece of gray granite, and from the Best Year stamp set, I've got Wishing You Your Best Year Yet, and I'm going to stamp basic gray on top of gray granite. So when you're stamping on your cards, don't always stamp on white or vanilla. Try stamping a tone on tone, with this being the darker tone ink on the lighter tone of the cardstock. And I'm going to use one of my Tasteful Labels dies, and I'm going to die cut this phrase out, and it's going to be a layer on the top of my card. Let me just turn it. My plates are a little bit warped, and when they get warped, they pull. The magnetic pull works in a different way. think I'm finished with my die cutting and embossing machine. And there's, whoops, there's my phrase. Now I could antique the edges by adding maybe a little bit of a basic gray ink or gray granite ink, but I'm happy with how it looks. So I'm going to set this aside for a second, and I'm going to do some stamping. I have the daisy stamp from the Daisy Lane stamp set, and I'm going to create a set of daisies using these three colors, Night of Navy, Highland Heather, and Daffodil Delight. So I'm going to start with Daffodil Delight, and I'm going to ink and stamp this twice. And then I'm going to clean it. And then I'm going to use Highland Heather. And I'm going to again stamp twice. And then clean it again. And now I'm going to use Night of Navy. And again, stamp it twice. So you can choose your three favorite colors, but those are mine. I love these colors with gray granite and basic gray. And now I'm going to use my medium daisy punch, and I'm going to punch these all out. And I'll go ahead and do that, and I'll be back in a moment. Now I'm going to put the daisies together, color by color, and that will create an embellishment for the front of my card. Okay, and one more. There we go. So I've got my three flowers, I've got my card front, and I've got my phrase. So what I want to do is I'm going to use some Stampin' Dimensionals, the larger ones or the regular size ones, and I'm going to put my phrase on first. Like so. And then I'm going to use the mini Stampin' Dimensionals. Here they are. And I'm going to add my flowers next. I'll put the purple one there and the Daffodil Delight. I guess like that. And then the final touch is really fun. I'm going to put the Night of Navy one under there like that. See, it's starting to take shape. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of my linen thread, and I am going to put it underneath. I'll show you first, and then I'll go ahead and do it. And what I want to do is create the effect that this is actually a hanging frame on the front of my card. So I'm going to use a piece of linen thread, and I'm going to use one of my basic jewel rhinestones as the nail in the wall. It's going to take a few minutes to do that. I'm going to attach my linen thread using the liquid glue, and then I'm going to, since these are already adhesive backed, just apply one of these. And then what I'll do is I'll come back and I'll show you the finished product. Back in a moment. And here is the final card. Isn't it super cute? If you would like a list of the supplies that I used and the measurements for all of the layers, head on over to my blog, www.nutsaboutstamping.com. And if you would like to place an order for the products I used to make this card, I will link in the description box for this video a way to do that that's so cool in my brand new online store. You'll definitely want to check it out. I'm Terry. I am nuts about stamping. I hope you'll try a new fun technique today too. Bye for now.